Hello and welcome to the We're from the Valley podcast. I'm Sam Aparicio, and today's guest is Dr. Jeannette Moreno. Dr. Moreno, thank you so much for accepting the invite to hang out with me today and just chat a little bit. I'm really glad that you said yes.
Thank you so much for the invitation. This is a whole new world for me, and I'm really excited. That's why I got lost getting here. But yes, I think it's going to be a real treat for me to do something this new, this wonderful.
Good. Yeah, I'm excited as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners, just to give them a little bit of your background.
Well, my mother is from North Carolina, so my name is Jeannette Moreno McNeil. Her name was McNeil McGuire. She was Scotch-Irish. And my father was from Veracruz. That's his name was Moreno Robles. So between Veracruz and the Scotch-Irish, I ended up a psychiatrist. So I think it has to do with the mixture of a lot of personalities and a lot of nations and a lot of cultures. And here we are in the valley where the cultures mix every day. We speak from one language to the other. We have customs that go from eating breakfast at tacos and lunch at pizza, and it's a beautiful life here. I'm very, very happy to be here and happy to tell you about my experience. Yes, I studied first psychology.
Okay.
And
so before psychiatry, you started in psychology.
Psychology.
Okay. Awesome.
Actually, I'm a kind of a wild lady because in high school I went to the director and I said, I think I can do 11th and 12th at the same time. And he said, well, it hasn't been done. And I said, yes, but if I bunch up and then instead of going to recess or whatever it was called then, I think it was called recess, as I take band, and then instead of I have enough credits to graduate. So I'm going to jump and do 11th and 12th. And he says, well, if you think you can do it, go ahead. You're going to be taking physics and chemistry and biology and all of these subjects together. Are you sure you can do it? Oh, of course I can do it. Well, I had a chance to look at my sister's annual of that year, and it really was a crazy year. It was a very small school, an American school in Monterey. It's now a huge school with a big football team and a cheerleading. At that time, it was very small, so everybody did everything. And then I looked at the annual, and I saw that I had been co-editor of the annual, editor of the newspaper. I had played the clarinet in the band. I had been a cheerleader. I had been in the math club. I said, when did I get into the math club? All of these strange things, but I finally graduated and was going away to a small finishing school in Germany in a little town called Friedrichshaffenburg. And I also had my suitcase. I was going with a nice young girl from Monterey whose parents owned a jewelry shop, and we were going in September. And they called me from the school and they said, you've won a scholarship that they give to one student per country in Ohio at a small girls' school. It's a university. It's called Western College for Women, and it's a daughter school, Mount Holyoke. Well, I went home, told my parents, and I was very excited. I, can go away to college. The scholarship was for 4 years. So off I went in September, no finishing school. And I started studying psychology. I loved psychology. I loved the reason why and how come and who and when and all of those beautiful questions about life. And so I'm still curious like that. Today I'm working at a library, it's Spear Library, and I tell everybody they have to go. It's really beautiful. It's in Mission. And my eye was caught by a book about pirates. Oh, I've got to find out more about pirates. And then I found out that there was 3 types of pirates, and I'm not supposed to be reading. But then when I found out where they came from, and then I found another book on castles, and I was so excited. And I said, this is the wrong job for me. I'm going to be reading instead of putting books away. But yes, I've had always this curiosity about life. So I studied in Ohio for a year, and I came back to Mexico. And my father had said the American school, any school of a foreign school in Mexico, they're only accredited as secondary school. He said you have no high school to get into a Mexican university if you have to. So then I went and I did my second high school at a Mexican school in Monterrey. It's called Tecnológico de Monterrey. And I finished, I did it in a year and a half. And the fun part of that was that during the summertime, a lot of students come from all over the world to go to summer school in Mexico and learn Spanish. Well, there were beautiful girls from all over the world there. And of course, right away the Mexicans said that their name was Pepe Pemex, to be able to say that the gas stations were all theirs and belonged to the family. And all the girls fell for it. And I kept wanting to say, they're not really named Pepe Pemex. They're, his name is Juan Gutierrez or something. But it was a wonderful year, and I finished. And then I went away to Berkeley to study more psychology. Well, at Berkeley, I was there during the year where they protested Vietnam. And being a nice rebel, I was the one with the sign that said, no to Vietnam War, and then was out there on the lawn barefoot, and my parents wanted me to come home, I think. But anyway, after Berkeley, I really found out that the psychologists, for me, they need to know more about the body. They need to know about thyroid. They need to know about how the body functions to be a better psychologist was what I wanted to be. And at that time I was going to a psychiatric hospital for just to see what it would be like. And the teacher asked one of his students, it was a class of psychiatry, he turned to the student and said, what's happening to the patient? And the student said, he's an alcoholic. And he said, yes, but what's happening to him? ¿Qué le pasa? What's he going through, And the student said, oh, I don't know. I just know that that's what he is, And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to know what's happening to him. I want to know, the colors of the flags of the pirates, and I want to know the amount of fairies that live in the forest and the ones that live in the ocean. And it's just a wanting to to be deeper, to dig deeper into things. So then I decided I was going to study medicine. So I go back to Mexico, and in the state of Nuevo León, to study medicine, you have to do the high school for medical school. So I had to enroll in my third high school. First the American school, then Instituto Tecnológico de Monterrey, and this was called Centro Cultural for women, para mujeres. But I will tell a funny thing that happened to me there. It's just a girls' school, and it's government run, and it's from 6 to 9 o'clock. So I decided I would teach during the day at my old American school and go to school at night at the high school. Well, I have to tell you what happened. After being at Berkeley and almost going barefoot and, protesting, and I come to this little girls' school, and she says, on the very first day of school, she says, you have broken the rules of our school. You have come to class without wearing sleeves. And in Monterrey, the heat in September is, so I had worn a blouse that didn't have sleeves. Well, you can't go into class like that. And I said, well, I didn't know. And she says, oh, come with me to the office. And this director had a mustache. I mean, and there was no other way of saying it. She was just, as demanding as can be. So I followed her down the hallway, and she sat me in her office and put Kleenex around my sleeve. And she made some little sleeves with the Kleenex. And as I walked back to class with my little Kleenex waving in the air. I thought, if I can make it through today, I can make it through my third high school. And I said, well, take all of my subjects and make a revaluation, just to find out. And they said, okay. And they found out that I was missing drawing. I didn't have drawing. I didn't have medical physics. And I didn't have anatomy. So that's why I had to do it. So then I went into medical school. And I started medical school at 2 years, and then I got married. And I really finished medical school. I was the only one who finished with 4 children. And everybody said, how did you do it? I still don't know how I did it. I will give a little secret, though. To learn something, one of the best ways to learn it is with humor. And one of the second best ways through repetition. The repetition of something, eventually you'll learn it. So what I would do, I would write in my little notebook on one page. I would read a little bit and make a question. And then I would write the answer on the back in a full answer, all the words. Like, what is biology? And then on the back I would say, biology is the study of life. And fill out what a biology was. Well, when I finished my 7 years of medical school, we had to present an exam. And I was the only one that had enough questions about each subject. So everybody came over to my house to study. And for example, in gynecology, I had, how many questions do you think I had? Come on, tell me, guess.
I don't know. Give me an idea. Ballpark.
No, guess, just guess.
Just gynecology alone?
Yeah.
I don't know. 10? 20? How long is this test?
No. The test is on all the books of gynecology,
okay.
All the births, all the everything.
Yeah.
So, okay, guess how many I had in pediatrics, the babies.
I have no idea. I have no frame of reference. That's the
Okay,
thing.
I know. No, nobody really can imagine. I had 12,000.
Holy moly, that's crazy.
In gynecology, and 7,000 in.
How does anybody keep track of that?
Well, you put it in a notebook. And question number 1 is this in question. So when you study,
yeah.
I would take the children to the park with my notebooks, or one notebook. And I would say, okay, question number 432, I don't know it very well. And I had little clues in the margin. If I knew it well, it was a line through it. If I didn't know it, it was like a diagonal. And if I didn't know it at all, I would put a little 0 next to it. So then I would just study my zeros, or I would study my diagonals. And I made a lot of questions with very short answers. So really, it wasn't that bad. So when I finished, I really had a wonderful time, because in Mexico, you have to give a year of service to your country. And that year of service is according to your grade point average. So I was very lucky, because I had the 3rd grade point average of all the, something like, I don't know, 1,000 students, or I don't know how many we were, but a lot of us. And so I was able to pick a nursery for my little baby that I was breastfeeding, and the 3-year-old, because I waited always until they were 3 years old, and walking and talking and little persons before I'd go back to school. And I still recommend it. I really think that we're producing a lot of children who have attention disorder deficits, because they're being fed in these little carts, in the little strollers. And when you breastfeed, or when you hold the baby looks into your eyes and you look into their eyes, and there's an attention span that is prolonged. But when the baby is in a cart, his little eyes move everywhere. And when they get into school, they can't focus on the page. So the teachers diagnose, and they're right. Attention disorder deficit. They have no way of focusing on their book or on the words or what's being said, because their eyes would disperse from birth.
That's amazing. So you're saying that in order for the baby to be able to learn or have this ability to focus, there has to be that eye contact between baby and mother.
And you can take the time. It takes 4 minutes maybe, or 5 or 15 or something, while you feed the baby on one side, or when you turn it over to the other side, or when you feed it with a bottle, or just holding it on your lap. People are not holding the babies on the laps anymore. They're holding them in these little bags. That's okay because it's stuck to their body. But when they put them in the cart, they told me now that there's a bottle that has handles on it. And as soon as the baby's about 5 months old, he can hang on to those handles and feed himself. So I think it's very sad because if the mother is going to miss out on that bonding that is so necessary for the child to later on focus on things. His little eyes in the classroom, you can go in, his little eyes are just going everywhere.
It's amazing how that bond, that's like, it's the what is it, the physical proximity has so much to do with the development of the baby. Wow.
And then walking, they're carrying the baby in the little cart, so the walking takes longer, and then they don't let them crawl, and the crawling is very necessary for coordination of movements. So then when they get into school, they can't coordinate well. And we're having a diagnosis now in the young populations of attention disorder deficit and bipolar. They swing from one mood to another mood, or they swing from one activity to another. There's not a real flowing of a body into a rhythm, into a rhythm that would be. So.
That's amazing. I'm really glad that you got the chance to choose the nursery, because I'm sure you learned so much there.
I did, and I loved it. And then I went on to be, actually, I was probably the only psychiatrist at a school, because they usually have psychologists, but they don't have very often psychiatrists. And this was in the city of Aguascalientes. It was a Dutch Montessori school. And I learned a lot. I was there 11 years as the psychiatrist of the school, and we would have meetings with the teachers, with the parents, and I was able to really integrate into a wonderful community of people. For example, how important nutrition is in mental health right now. Doctors aren't learning that much about nutrition. We have maybe a semester, maybe a course of a year, but really it's the fuel that we're putting into our bodies. And now we have to go to a nutritionist, nutriólogo in Spanish, to have her help us either with being overweight or underweight or not eating right. And there's all kinds of medicines for the gastric system. And I really think 100 years from now, they'll be laughing at us and saying, they put these pills and they took them, and then they took these liquids, and they're going to be laughing, because really a good nutrition and a good body, taking care of your body will always make better humans. And then I think in the future our minds will be better taken care of.
I agree. I think that's fundamental, and I'm really glad that you share that, because it's interesting. I've heard of friends of mine, and myself included. I've been diagnosed with depression before, and it's one of those things that there's no immediate cure or treatment or anything like that, but it is something that you can help to mitigate or to make better. And one of the ways that it helped me was going to the gym regularly and focusing on lifting weights, and that helped me tremendously, because at the end of the day, they do say that there's a correlation between physical activity and how you're is it the I forget what it's called.
The endorphins, but there's a part of your brain that's also that you're exercising, if you will,
and it helps so much also with self-confidence and things like that, you know. So yeah, I can totally agree and see how that can benefit for people's mental health.
And also the community. You know, when I wrote my thesis. Well, let me finish real quick what I finished.
Sure.
I finished psychiatry, and then I did. I finished medical school. Then I did 3 years of psychiatry, and I was lucky enough to work 2 of the years at a mental psychiatric hospital, and 1 of the years at the Spanish hospital in Mexico City, which is a general hospital. And then you get experience with things that happen to people, like an accident or a suicide or eating disorders or an amputation that need a psychiatric intervention. And then I went into a master's for 3 more years and did child psychiatry, adolescent psychiatry, adult psychiatry, and pediatric. That was very, very interesting. Elderly people have a depression that's very different from younger people because there's anger. They're facing death, and they're angry at they're facing death, and they're facing disability, and they're angry at the disability. And then they become there's more symptoms of paranoia, you know. My watch was here, and I had this saved, and don't touch this, and there's an anger component in the third age population that is not usually so present in younger generations, you know. So it was very useful for me because we do have an aging population, and it is important to be able to treat them and to let them know that what's happening is natural for them to be angry. It's natural for them to be depressed. They are at the end of, you know, but they can have a beautiful life. I mean, they can certainly live it up. And there's so many wonderful things to be doing here in McAllen. I'm so glad you have this iPod. One of the things that I can recommend, well, aside from all the delicious places to eat, there's interesting things going on. For example, many of the people who have lived here all their lives, I meet them sometimes in the airport and sometimes at my job. This morning, there was a man who was born and raised in McAllen, and I asked him if he knew about the Greek Orthodox church that was on Houston, and he said no, he didn't. He had never heard of it. And I said, well, they have a food festival once a year with food from Eastern Europe and Greek plates and Russian beet soup and all of these. Well, he was just amazed that this happens in McAllen. And yes, at this festival I was at, I think it was before COVID, they even had belly dancing, and a lot of funny things were going on at that International Food Festival. But it's worthwhile finding and going. Maybe they have a Vespers Mass on Saturdays at 6, and they have a regular Mass on Sunday. And from that church, the Catholic Church was born from the Greek Orthodox Church, and it's very different. They stand during the whole Mass. The men stand behind their women. The old people, they do have a place where you can sit, but it's sung, and it's a beautiful little church on Houston, and many people have never heard of it. So yes, there's beautiful places here to do and things to do. And I think that the more you reach out, speaking of mental health, the more you reach out to community things, the more rich your life becomes. Sometimes I'll ask a patient, and what do you play in your home? And they look at me and they say, play. Yes, you know, you play cards? Do you play loteria? Do you play ball? Do you go to a park? What does your family play together? And they don't. It's very strange. They look around at each other, or they look at, at the ceiling, and they say, no, we really don't play. And it's very important to play. And then the next question is like, what are your chores inside your home? What does each person do? And they don't do anything, maybe sometimes the mother does or the father. But what do they do for the house? Have you painted a wall together? Or have you gardened together? Or what have you done for your home as a structure? No. No. And then what have you done for your community? Do you pick up like garbage at a park, or do you walk in a group, or things that you can do for your community? It's also missing, and it's all part of mental health. As you reach out into other areas of living, of life, your life becomes richer, and then the depression is easier to go out the door.
Mm-hmm. You know, Dr. Moreno, one of the things that I've noticed about, at least here in our culture, is that sometimes this topic of depression, like people don't talk about it enough because maybe they think it's taboo, or maybe they're a little embarrassed. No traes nada, no pasa nada. Like, se te pasa, you're fine. I've noticed that, you know, myself and my family, and I want to break that stigma because first and foremost, in order for you to be able to address an issue, you have to admit that there is one, right? So at the end of the day, I don't think we talk about it enough.
No, and I'm very anxious to open up a lot of doors of things that people can do without having to take medication. For example, when there's anger, I was lucky enough to interview a man who belonged to something that was called Parents Anonymous, and I had never heard of it. I had heard of Alcoholics Anonymous and many other, you know, Gamblers Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous and many other, but I had never. And he said, well, it's a very small group in Mexico City that what we do, since we've been hurt or abused by hitting us, by our parents, we tend to do the same with our children. So we have things that help us to stop that. And I said, could you tell me some of them? And he says, yes. We take baths. I said, what? He says, yes, the minute we feel we're angry or we're going to hit somebody or slap somebody or put our fist through the wall, we walk straight into the bathroom and get into the shower. He says, sometimes I've had to take a bath 3 times a day.
Wow.
And I said, that's a wonderful tip for anybody, you know? You feel you just can't handle things, go get in the shower. And it's the same feeling because there's protons and neurons. You know, it's after it rains, when it gets heavy, and then after it rains, you feel very light. That's what happens the skin when the water from the shower takes everything down. You walk out and you feel lighter and you feel less burdened. And it's very similar to the feeling that after it rains. So if you're angry again 2 or 3 hours later, go get into the shower again, you know, and just let the water heal you. One of the things I read someplace that's interesting is that because we're carrying our phones around and on the computers, we're charged electrically, and that we should go out and go barefoot so that our feet hagan tierra, how do you say, are grounded?
Grounded, yeah, to get grounded, yeah.
Mm-hmm, to get grounded, or to hug a tree or a big plant so that the electricity we have in our body is grounded. I had never heard of something like that, but it sounds very logical that we do need to discharge.
You know, I have heard that about sitting down or going barefoot to where there's grass, an area where there's grass, and let your feet just kind of sink in to feel that. Mm-hmm. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And there's a Japanese photographer who has photographed water. I'll remember it for our next podcast. Mm-hmm. But he photographed the water when people would yell at it, and photograph the water when people would talk nice to it, and have different crystals, you know. And I think in the future, many things about nature and about the human quality of life are going to change when we know more. You know, right now I really feel that they're giving a lot of medications, and they're treating the symptoms, not the person. And that's why I went into studying psychoanalysis, to see what the unconscious part of the human was. And then I went into teaching and learning about group therapy and family therapy. And I remember one time the one who knew more was the maid, so I bring the maid, and it was like tribe therapy. We had the whole family, and the maid was there. All we needed was the gardener and whoever else had the possibility of talking with the person. No. So yes, I think in the future we are going to be more cautious with giving medicine just to take away the symptom and find out what's really happening to the person, especially, for example, in the mental part areas of control, which are addictions. All of the addictions, what the new definition is that it's something from the outside that makes us feel good. It can be food. It can be many things. I'm going to have some water.
Mm-hmm.
I touched something touchy, I guess. So I think once we find out more about addictions, more about the things that make us happy, like this man would say. Another thing we would do if we felt very angry, we'd walk out the door. Just walk out the door as fast as we can. And we'd lock ourselves in the car. People that didn't have cars would just walk around the block as many times as it needed, so he could walk back in the house and not hurt anybody. The room that's the most dangerous is the bedroom. That's where the most violence happens. So if you're in a bedroom and you're having an argument, get out of the bedroom. The second place is the kitchen. This is what they've studied in statistics. So get out of the kitchen. But if you can get out of your house, that's even better. Just walk away from anger. And one of the other things he said that he would do if they would be sitting, they'd sit on their hands, or they'd dig their nails into them. And then one of the things that was interesting, they wear a rubber band, like the one you have, a little rubber band. And if they felt they were going to say something that wasn't right, or they would snap their rubber band. And I usually have one just to remember that there's some things that maybe I shouldn't say, or it's not a bad idea to carry around a little rubber band or one of these hair rubber bands. I remember I was at a party for children, and a girlfriend next to me said, "What do you have that horrible thing on your wrist for? Throw it away." And I said, "Well, it reminds me that I'm at a party and I may have the temptation to gossip or to whatever, and I'd have to be careful about what I say." And she says, "Oh, forget it. I am so critical of everything." And I said, "Well, here, take it off and put it on." And she says, "The person I criticize the most is my husband." And so I said, "Well, here, take it." And so it was a Friday, so that Saturday and Sunday, apparently she wore it, because Monday she called me, Monday night, and she said, "Thank you for the bracelet or for the rubber band," because she says, "I was so nice to my husband Saturday and Sunday, and Monday he was diagnosed with cancer. And I would have felt terrible if I had started being nice to him because of the cancer." She says, "At least I was nice to him because of your rubber band." And I said, "Well, the man's now fine. My friend's fine." But that's a good story, because sometimes we do need rubber bands to snap and give us a little snap and say, "Don't say that, don't hurt anybody if you can."
That's so amazing. Yeah.
Well, those are the little tips that
reminders,
I've learned, that you don't need medicine sometimes to be a better person.
I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like there's always something we can do to better the situation that we're in a natural, organic way. right. And I love it. And obviously, you've learned so much about it. So, in terms of psychiatry, how long did you practice for?
This October, the doctors that finished with my graduation, we're celebrating that I've been a doctor for 50 years.
That's amazing.
It
Congratulations.
is amazing. And a psychiatrist, well, let's say, take away maybe 10 of those, I maybe 30 or 40 years at least. Yes, and I love my work. I love what I do. And one of the challenging things for me is that sometimes when I'll be seeing somebody, they'll say, "How did you know that about me?" And I said, "Well, I've just studied a little bit." I can't really, but it's that curiosity that wants to know more about the person and wants to know, what is happening to them, not just the symptoms. And one of the things I do, I ask the patient to help me diagnose, which is very strange for a doctor. But this is what I do. I ask them, we're going to grade you, but you're going to grade you. And I'm going to tell you a symptom, and you're going to tell me where you're at. And I say, for example, depression. 10 is a lot of depression, and 0 is no depression. Where are you? And they'll say 6 or 8 or 10. Okay, and then from there I'll ask, and suicide thoughts, because that's where depression is dangerous. And do you have a lot of them? Is that a 10 and that's a 0? And then they'll say 4, 6, or whatever. Okay, now attention. When you have to concentrate on something, how well do you see your attention? Can you concentrate, or is it, your mind's wandering all over the place? 10 is good concentration, and 0. And in 5 or 6 questions, they have an idea of where they are with 5 or 6 symptoms. But I tell them, this is just like if we were taking a brush stroke. The painting is your life. Let's really go into what your life's about. What makes you happy? What makes you sad? How are you sleeping? How are you eating? Doctors sometimes don't take into consideration how important it is, the basic things of life, like eating and sleeping. No, I haven't slept well in I don't know how many years, doctor. Well, that's where we have to start. Sleeping, not sleeping, is being used as a torture in some countries. They keep the people awake. And it would be important for you to sleep well. And then your body gets into a better rhythm. But then they take a pill for sleeping, and then they take a pill for waking up, and then they take it's the yellow one or the blue one. And then if you've got both things, anxiety and depression, it's another one. And one of the things I have found that helps in anxiety is the breathing, something very simple. There's all kinds of exercises with the mindfulness now, and I think that the anxiety will go away if you realize that it's temporary. That's the very first thing to realize. This is going to pass, and then no matter what, it will pass, and it helps. But there's a shortage of doctors, there's a shortage of psychiatrists, there's a shortage of people who are willing to hear your history. I think they made a study once to see when the doctor interrupts a patient, the patient starts to tell his story or starts to tell what's happening to him, and they've studied how long it takes for the doctor to say, "That's fine, but let me ask you some questions," or "Let me tell you what I think," or "Let me," It's the study that I saw was 19 seconds before the doctor interrupts the patient. So sometimes we just don't listen. And that's why I'd like to talk about 5 styles of listening, which they're very simple. We use all of them. And you can, I'd like for this conversation to be something useful that you can go home. You can diagnose your own symptoms, that you can say, well, am I at a 10 or am I at a 4? Or it's something that you can do. And it's also something you can learn about your style of listening, because a good communication with anybody, with your doctor, with your family, begins with the possibility of good listening. So I'm going to give you an example. If I give you an information like my dog is sick, you can listen with one style, which I call the pilot or the torero. Or he just listens and erases, and he didn't really listen, or the listener didn't listen. That sounds repetitive, but that's exactly what happens. He'll answer with something like, it's a good movie, or today's Wednesday. He didn't even hear that you said that your dog was sick. The second style I call the solutioner. There's people that have solutions for everything. You know, if you're having problems with your girlfriend, finish the girlfriend. If you're having problems with a partner, get rid of the partner. If you're, your dog is sick, get another one. They always have a solution, and you can find people who are solutioners everywhere, and you can be a solutioner also. The next style is called the judge. You give an information, and he says that's the judge is. There's two styles of judging. One is he forgives, and one he condemns. So if you say, my dog is sick, that's the most terrible thing can happen, he's condemning. You probably didn't give him the medicine, you haven't taken him to the right vet, you are wrong. And the judge that forgives, the judge says, it's the best thing that can happen to you right now. Maybe he'll die. He's not listening to what you're saying. The person who really listens connects with what you're feeling, and he travels inside you or in your shoes, like they say, and not just puts them on. He walks quite a while, maybe even sometimes days, and he can say, I know what you're going through. My dog was sick, or I imagine you didn't sleep last night, or I imagine it, you're hurting. Is there any way I can help you? I'm with you. Or even just silence, but it's an empathic, with empathy. It's a person who's really feeling what you're feeling when they give you any kind of message. It can be a message of something very simple. But you have those 5 styles, and you can take them home and practice them, and they're fun.
Interesting. Wow. 5 styles of listening. I love it.
Well, I invented them. I did the names, el torero, el juez, el solucionador, y el empatizador. And I gave a workshop once. And I would have people come down in twos, and a person give an information and ask him to answer. And then I would have the audience say what style he was using to answer. And that was very hard for them to understand. And then one man came down and says, Senora Gonzalez, I hear that your baby's sick and you must be having a hard time. And did he have a fever and this and that? And then we applauded him. He knew exactly what it felt like to have a baby who was sick. He was right there with her. And then I asked him what he did for a living. He was a man who hired people at jobs for a company. He was had a human resource.
Yeah.
So he did that all the time. So he was good at it,
So would you say that the ideal style of listening is the one with empathy?
Yes.
Because at least you're putting yourself in the person's shoes.
Yes, and also with depression and with anxiety, I find that the people that least understand is sometimes the family, They're the people that just kind of walk away, and they don't empathize with you, They put it as a thing of willpower. You don't have enough willpower to get better. You don't have enough willpower to go out and get a job or whatever.
And that's really tough, because when you're going through depression, a lot of times you feel like you're in your moments of most weakness. So some people, you can't will yourself out of that situation,
No.
So I'm glad that you're able to kind of understand, and that you can help us have a different perspective on how to address it.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. It's very rare that I get a chance to tell people about these things, because they're very simple things that anybody can do.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be a doctor to help somebody get a little bit better, if you really listen. And you don't have to be, a doctor to help him walk out the door when he's angry, or you walk out the door, so there's not this violence. We're having a lot of violence, in humans. I think we're angry. Maybe life isn't giving us everything we want, but if you learn how to handle your anger, by putting it under control, by saying that, that's enough, or just talking to yourself or using a bracelet that you can snap, and just, that's enough. That's it. It's over. Because I think that's the two areas of mental health that we're suffering the most.
Yeah.
The depression, the anxiety, and the anger. Anger. I'm working with migrating populations, and it's interesting that these three things that we're talking about, the migrants have them. They have a feeling of loss, a feeling of pain, a feeling of anger, a feeling of sadness, and a feeling of transition. And these same feelings they're found in adolescence. It's funny, when they studied what age people suicide the most, it's between 13 and 17, which is the age where a person is going through pain, loss, transition, anxiety, and depression. So it's a time to really listen to our young people, really listen, and I would recommend finding out what they're listening to, because they're listening to many things on the internet, which are very strange, very different from what we can imagine. There's strange groups, and there's strange situations that people are hooked into, because it produces, for example, movies about fear. Why do they like terror movies? Some people ask me, why does my daughter or my son want to go to these movies? They're not real, but well, because many of the things that happen when a person is frightened is very similar to a period of excitement. For example, there's a faster heartbeat, there's the sweating of the hands, there's the feeling of lightness, the feeling of something that's going to happen, that's going to be, I can't control. And it's very similar to a relationship. So it gets very close to what could be a sexual encounter, but very disguised by fear. And it's important to talk to the young people and say these situations that you're hooked on seeing these movies is because you're hooked on feeling things in your body that later on you may be able to feel in a normal situation. And it's important to talk to them about the feelings of a normal, beautiful relationship. See, now when they say, I have a daughter at home who's nice and sweet and likes to stay home, she's very quiet. Instead of thinking that she's normal, they think, poor lady, she has a retarded daughter. And the thing is, the sweetness has gone out of women. It's now they have to be strong, they have to be brave, they have to be physically strong. They have to be equal and have to be able to do the same things that men do. And yes, but don't lose the sweetness. Women are the decorators of life. They're the ones that come along and put a flower pot or put a flower or paint it pink. That we're decorators. And if we lose that, if we become a shadow of what the beauty of a woman can be with her sweetness, with her gentleness, and we become harsh, or we become hard, or we become brave, or we become something that's against our nature, we're losing out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned about the being addicted to the fear or those kinds of feelings. I did read something about that, where people who grew up in a home maybe where they experienced a lot of stress tend to seek that out in other relationships. And so an example is watching scary movies. It's like they seek that thrill, that stress, because they're addicted to it, because it feels familiar, which is so interesting, right? And it causes them to look for or to seek relationships where that same dynamic is found, right? Where they can experience those feelings of stress, or like you said, elevated heart rate and things like that. How could somebody break that pattern, would you say?
Oh, you said it very clearly. One of the first things you have to do is to become conscious of it. You can't change something if you don't see it. You can't change it if you don't understand it. Most of my therapy is focused on understanding what's happening, because sometimes you can see it but you don't understand it, or sometimes it's like let's say a sunset. You can see the sunset, but when you start understanding the colors and the reasons and the beauty of being who you are, when you realize who you are and the beauty of being so unique in this planet, you can understand where you need other things that you have no control over. For example, my example is, it's like a dance. There's a Mexican dance that's called La Raspa. Even the name means La Raspa, and it goes taran, 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 and everybody knows what follows. Tarararan, taran.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like when you meet somebody that puts the first steps, taran, you say, oh, I know this dance. I can dance this one. Swing my arm and put my foot, and I can, boy, we know this one. And it happens in alcoholism, It's been discovered that many alcoholics, when they have children, they marry alcoholics, or they have alcoholic children. What happened? Why? Why would, if you lived a world that was full of anxiety, why would you gravitate towards another world where it's the same? Well, because they're playing your music and you know how to dance to that one, and excuse me, this is my turn, and let's go to the dance floor, and let's, and there is this elevation of an area where there's a very high adrenaline. It's like a roller coaster. You go up, and I need that. That's delicious. That's my dance, And I remember one of my patients, she wasn't from Mexico, she was from another country in South America. And she said to me, you would like me to meet men who tie their shoes with shoelaces. I like cowboy boots. And she said, you just don't understand. And I said, well, yeah, cowboys is your music, or lacy shoes, or discotheques and bibliotheques, or whatever. It's a music that you gravitate because it's the music you know. People want to feel comfortable in life. They want to go to a room and they say, I'm comfortable here. This is where I want to be. This is the happiest room I've been in. And sometimes wives don't understand that, husbands would want to come home and find that comfort. And they have to work to support a life, a wife and children for the rest of their lives. You know, they carry a responsibility, and it's funny. That's why many of them, will end up marrying their secretary or their assistant, because she's used to saying, "Oh yes, I have it. Yes, I'll do it for you. I'll make the phone call. I'll be here for you. I'll sing. I'll dance. I'll this." And he comes home to a wife, and she says, "No, you haven't done this, and you haven't done." He hears more no's, I think, in some areas of his life than in some areas where he hears more yeses. And she may not have the report done, but she says she has it done, and she says she will give it to him, and she says, and it's a comfortable situation, and so you don't need to move. You go back to the office because you've got more work to do, or you're happier at the office, or happier on the golf course, or happy, as human beings, we do look to be happy. There's a lady on the somewhere I saw her on internet, I think, who has, it's called the Happiness Project, and she says there's things you can do to be happy immediately, and one of them is to make your bed. You wake up in the morning, you make up your bed, and you feel happy immediately. And another is to eat an apple. You feel happy immediately. And one of the ones she has, I can't remember all of them, but was to jump. If you jump, you feel happy immediately. Well, I've never jumped to feel happy. But it became a joke between my husband and I. Have you jumped today? You need to go out and jump a little. Please go jump a while, And so we would laugh about the jumping. And yes, I think maybe we all need to go out and jump a while or do things that make us happy, because it's a very short time we're here. It's a very beautiful world out there. And we tend to sometimes look at what's missing and not what we have. So I'm very happy for being here.
That's so cool. You're absolutely right. We forget what we have and we focus on what we don't, and that can be a vicious cycle. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was, you've lived in Mexico, you lived here in the States. How do you contrast both of those in terms of, did you have good memories here in the US and in Mexico? Did you have a preference? Is there something you're like, oh, I've experienced this while living in Mexico, but I didn't experience this in the US? Are there certain things that maybe you have memories tied to both of them?
Well, I can give an example. I think in the Mexicans, I don't know if all Latin America, but we really celebrate things. We celebrate a birthday. We celebrate being together. Life is a celebration. And I see the contrast a little bit from not only in the States. I lived in France. I've lived in Argentina. I've lived in a few other places. But the feeling of celebration is very different. And I lived in a city where there was a celebration once a year. And it was a very wonderful experience. I went to the Winter Olympics in Calgary in 1988 because my girlfriend lived there. And it was a wonderful experience. She had bought tickets for the inauguration and to see the events. And I noticed all the children were in school. And I said, Vicky, why are they in school? The Olympics is out there. They're only going to be here 2 weeks. The Olympics is over in 2 weeks. And they can talk to the athletes and they can see them practice. But Jeannette, they're going to miss school. And then I said, Vicky, I live in Aguascalientes and they have a fair every single year. This in Calgary is a once in a lifetime. In Aguascalientes, it's every year. La Feria de Aguascalientes. It lasts 6 weeks, not 2 weeks. 6 weeks every year. The university closes. The school closed. The stores closed. Everything, everybody's celebrating on the streets. We have maybe sometimes like 8 million visitors over the feria, and most of the people that live there. We go to the beach. We leave the city because it's too much of a celebration. You can celebrate maybe a week, but 6 weeks.
That's a lot.
Every year, and the whole university is closed. And she said, I can't believe it. And I said, well, come to Aguascalientes once in a while. It's a beautiful. So that would be one of the things, the celebrating of little things, which is, I really think that's what life is about, you know?
I agree.
And I remember when I was coming to the States, a friend of mine says, why do you want to come to the States? I want to go live in Mexico. The people are happy there. He says, if it wasn't for a Mexican neighbor that brings me chicken soup, I would already be living in Mexico. But I have this wonderful neighbor, and I'm not moving. You know, don't want to miss her. You know, and so yes, I think that one of the differences would be the celebrations.
I love it, and I think that's so cool because life is hard enough as it is. So we should be celebrating. We should be enjoying those moments where we can celebrate.
Well, your iPod, what there is to do here in McAllen, there's all kinds of things going on that people don't really know about, and I just love, celebrating and I'm sometimes a little traviesa. What would that be in English? Naughty? Yeah.
Troublemaker.
No, naughty.
Yeah,
I'll give you an example. I read on the calendar that there was a Poke Fest.
Poke Fest?
Yes, a Poke Fest at the convention center.
Oh, okay. Gotcha,
I want to go to the Poke Fest. And so I parked the car, and there's a couple coming, and I say, excuse me, did you poke anybody? And they look at me and they say, no. It's the Poke Fest, isn't it? Because I'm really looking forward to poking some people.
And it was poking.
It's a Pokemon.
Yeah. Poke Fest.
Yes, it was a poke, but the word was Poke Fest. So and she says, no, no, we didn't poke anybody. And I'm trying to keep a very straight face. I do things like that sometimes, and I said, no. And she says, it's the Pokemon, the little, so, well, I'm very sorry, those are the little things that I do sometimes. You have to find humor in everything. I wrote my thesis to become a psychoanalyst, and it was called A Sense of Humor in the Healing Process. And I used humor a lot in my family. My father had a very wonderful sense of humor, and my husband's and my children do too. They have a beautiful sense of humor. The mother questions, when I call them on the phone, because they all live far away, they all know the mother questions. And the mother questions are, did you sing a little song today? Yes, mother, I sang a little song. Did you dance a little dance? Yes, mother. They know their mother. And then I say, well, did you laugh a little? Yes, mother. And did you love a lot? Yes, mother, I did. Okay, the mother questions are over. Now, how are you? But those are the mother questions. They have to, And birthdays, we sing a little song. And then they have, my daughter-in-law comes tomorrow, and she has a dance that she does to go to Target. We're at the entrance of Target, and she says, I have to do my Target dance. She loves going to Target. And those are the little things that you can have that make life so enjoyable, so happy, make a song or a target. And I tell my patients they have to find something that makes them smile. It doesn't help if you tell people what to do. It doesn't work. And I can't tell my patients what to do. And a lot of therapists do. You have to do this, and you have to do that, and you have to, no. You have to find a smiling inside you. And I can give an example. This lady, her 2 daughters wouldn't make up their beds, and she told me, I have scolded them, I have taken away their phones, I have taken away their privileges, I have not let them go to parties, and they still do not make up their bed. So I said, well, think of something that's going to make you smile, that's going to make you laugh, that'll work, without telling them anything. So she came to her therapy the next time. She was smiling and laughing, and I said, "What did you do?" And she said, "See, it's that little naughtiness that I think it's contagious." But anyway, she said that she had gone to a place that makes banners, and she had had a banner made that said, in all colors, she says, "Oh, I picked an orange and a red and a blue." And she said, "I had so much fun picking the colors." And she said, "I put it says in Spanish, tengo tortícolis, por favor enderezame. I have a crick in my neck, please straighten me out." And I put the crick over the beds. The beds had the cricks in their necks, and they had to be straightened out. And it made them laugh, and she says, "I enjoyed it. I didn't tell them anymore to make up their bed, and they would laugh and straighten their beds because they had cricks. And then when I wanted to take the banner down, they wouldn't let me. They loved it. They've been making their beds for 2 weeks now." And those things.
Yeah.
One day, one of my sons slammed the door. And nobody had slammed. I mean, what was going on, And so I called him over to the door, and I said, "Honey, stand here next to the door. Let me tell you something. Your classes from the Academy of Closing Doors, the grades that are coming from New York, you got a 6, honey." And oh, my mother, here we go again, And he looks up at the ceiling. I said, "You're going to have to practice, because if you want a 10, so the Academy sends you some good grades, you've got to practice." So he slammed it, again. I said, "No, that's another 6. You're going to have to do it a few times." He knew he wasn't going to win, so he shut it the right way. "That's a 20. No, honey, you passed with flying colors. Can I give you a hug and congratulate you? Because I think the grades from the Academy of Closing Doors in New York, they're going to give you a very good grade." He's smiling by now, and he lets me hug him, which is at that 11 years old, it's not easy, and it's over. You didn't have to tell him, "En esta casa, don't slam the doors," or whatever. And I can give you another example. The lights were on all the time. So I said, I have to think of something that's going to make me smile. So I put little signs on little Post-its on all the, how do you call it?
Light switches?
Light switches that said, "Your mother loves you." Well, they didn't care if their mother loved them or not. The lights were still on. So I said, "Okay, I'm going to give you the difference from this light bill to the next light bill." So they were turning off the light bills all over. I'd be reading, I'd be watching the TV, and the lights would come off, "Oh, Mommy, I'm sorry, didn't know you were there." And they did save a little bit. The light bill came, and I quickly ran to a store and got 3 big cakes that had a hole in them, those big cakes. They had come in a box at that time. And I put one chocolate syrup, and I put the other cajeta, and then I put the other powdered sugar, and I put a little sign inside the hole that said, the company with our last name congratulates you on having lowered the bill, and you have now have our sincerest congratulations, blah, 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 and my signature. And I sent them napkins. And they came home, "Mother, they thought it was our birthday," But they still remember, because the saving of the lights. You don't have to yell at people, "Turn out the lights." We're so creative as human beings. We can think of something that makes us smile, like the bandage or the bracelet that you pull, or the walking out the door, taking a bath. It will make us smile. This is the 3rd time I've taken a bath today. We're going to be smiling in the shower, but we're not hurting anybody, And yes, I think a sense of humor is one of the differences. You asked me between Mexican cultures and American cultures. Sometimes that being able to laugh at yourself is a real pleasure. It's a real creative part of living. Yeah. And when you're so poor, you have nothing else to give, nothing else to do. You can laugh.
I agree. I love it. That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. You know, the time has actually flown by just getting to chat with you. I love it. I do want to close out with a question. I think there's so much more that we can continue talking about, but maybe for another podcast.
I would love to come again. I'm so embarrassed. I was going to watch the time, and I'm looking at
No, you're good.
I didn't look at it once.
We were having fun, and we'll definitely leave the door open in case we want to do another podcast in the future. I would love that. But I do want to ask a question, and I want to close with this briefly. What is one piece of advice that you know, you're so full of wisdom, and since I met you, you seem like you're one of the coolest human beings I've met in just such a short amount of time that I've met you.
You're just being nice. You're just special.
But it's because I learned so much from you, and you just give off this really amazing vibe. But what's one piece of advice that you would like to offer the younger generation?
Golly, that's a yes. I was thinking about it, and what would I say? I think that it is such a pleasure to be here in life, and that as young people, as they're growing, you know, I would say to try to be an example to those that come behind, you know. I think that would be my. I remember a teacher gave a beautiful piece of advice, and I would love to copy him. It says, "Learn all you can, and teach all you know." That would be what I would tell them. Learn all you can, and then teach all you know.
I love it. Well, we'll go ahead and end with that. Learn all you can and teach all you know. Awesome. Dr. Moreno, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight and just getting to share a little bit with us with your time. And I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for listening to the We're from the Valley podcast. I'm Sam Aparicio. This has been Dr. Jeannette Moreno. Y'all take care and have a good one.